Have you ever wondered if the Jesus you've been taught about spoke words that were never truly translated? Words that, if understood in their original Aramaic tongue, would shatter everything you thought you knew about forgiveness, prayer, and the very nature of reality itself? Type "I am ready" in the comments if you've ever felt like something essential was lost in translation. For 2,000 years, Christianity has been built on Greek and Latin interpretations of what Jesus said. But Jesus didn't speak Greek. He didn't speak Latin. He spoke Aramaic, a language so ancient, so mystical, that each word carries layers of meaning our modern translations have completely erased. And here's what they don't want you to know. When you hear these 7 actual Aramaic phrases that Jesus spoke, when you understand what they really mean, the entire foundation of religious control, guilt, and separation crumbles into dust. If this resonates with you, hit that like button, because what I'm about to share could change not just how you see Christianity, but how you experience your own divine nature. Imagine for a moment that every sermon you've heard, every Bible verse you've memorized, was based on a translation of a translation of a translation. Imagine that the original words, the actual sounds that left Jesus' lips, contained a vibrational frequency, a coded wisdom that modern language simply cannot capture. What if I told you that the Lord's Prayer you recite isn't even close to what Jesus actually said? That when he spoke about the kingdom of heaven, he wasn't talking about a place you go when you die, but a state of consciousness you can access right now? In this video, we're going to examine 7 specific Aramaic words and phrases that Jesus actually spoke. Not interpretations, not theological additions, but the raw, mystical, earth-shattering original words. We'll explore what they meant in his time, how they were mistranslated, and most importantly, how understanding their true meaning can unlock a direct experience of the divine that no institution can mediate. This isn't about religion. This is about reclaiming the mystery that was stolen from you. To understand why these 7 Aramaic words matter so profoundly, we must first step back into the dusty, sun-scorched landscape of first-century Galilee. Jesus was not a Christian. Christianity didn't exist yet. He was a Jewish mystic, a rabbi who walked the hills of a land occupied by Rome, speaking a language that was already ancient when he breathed life into it. Aramaic wasn't just a language of commerce or daily conversation. It was the tongue of the Babylonian mystery schools, the language of the Zoroastrian magi, the sacred speech that carried within it the cosmological understanding of how reality itself is woven. When Jesus spoke, he spoke in a linguistic tapestry where every word contained multiple dimensions of meaning. Aramaic is a Semitic language where words are built from 3-letter roots, and each root vibrates with a spectrum of interconnected concepts. A single word could simultaneously mean breath, spirit, wind, and divine presence. This wasn't poetic flourish. This was how the ancient mind understood the universe, as a unified field of consciousness where nothing was separate, where the physical and spiritual were one continuous reality. But then something catastrophic happened. Within decades of Jesus' death, his teachings began to be written down in Greek by people who had never heard him speak, who were trying to fit his radical, mystical insights into Hellenistic philosophical frameworks. Greek is a language of precision, of definition, of separation. It excels at creating categories, distinctions, boundaries. When you translate the fluid, multidimensional consciousness of Aramaic into the rigid structure of Greek, you don't just lose nuance, you lose entire realities. Consider the political context. The Roman Empire needed Christianity to become a tool of control, not liberation. When Emperor Constantine consolidated Christian doctrine at the Council of Nicaea in 325 CE, the agenda wasn't spiritual truth. It was imperial unity. The mystical, experiential teachings that threatened hierarchical power structures had to be neutralized. And what better way than to mistranslate them? To turn "the kingdom of heaven is within you" into "the kingdom of heaven is at hand," making it something external, future, controlled by priests and emperors, rather than accessible to every human being in this moment. The Aramaic that Jesus spoke was specifically the Galilean dialect, influenced by the Jewish mystical traditions that would later surface in the Kabbalah, the Merkabah literature, and the writings of the Essenes found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. These communities understood something that modern religion has forgotten: that words are not just symbols, they are vibrational keys. The Hebrew and Aramaic alphabets were considered sacred geometries, each letter a doorway into divine consciousness. When Jesus spoke, he wasn't just conveying information, he was creating reality through sound, through intention, through the precise calibration of cosmic principles. Scholars like Rocco Errico, Neil Douglas Klotz, and George Lamsa have spent lifetimes recovering these original Aramaic meanings, comparing ancient Peshitta texts with Greek manuscripts, and the differences are staggering. What emerges is not the religion of guilt, original sin, and external salvation we've inherited, but a teaching of radical presence, unity consciousness, and the immediate availability of divine realization. Jesus wasn't founding a new religion. He was pointing to an ancient truth that predated all religions, that you are not separate from the sacred, that heaven is not a location but a frequency, that salvation is not something you earn but something you remember. This matters now more than ever because we live in an age where the old containers are crumbling. People are leaving religious institutions in droves, not because they've lost faith in the sacred, but because they can feel the disconnect between the translated teachings and the living truth. When you hear these 7 Aramaic words in their original context, something in your soul recognizes them. It's like coming home to a language you spoke before language existed. Let's begin with the first word, and it's one that will completely change how you understand everything Jesus taught. The word is Abwoon, what has been translated into English as Our Father in the Lord's Prayer. But here's what they never told you. Abwoon doesn't mean father like a man with a beard sitting on a throne in the clouds. In Aramaic, Abwoon comes from the root word ab, which means the source of all life, like a fountain that never stops flowing. It means the breathing life force that exists in everything, in you, in the trees, in the stars, in every atom of creation. When Jesus said Abwoon, he was pointing to the breath moving in and out of your lungs right now. He was saying that the divine isn't somewhere far away. It's as close as your next breath. It's the creative power that makes your heart beat without you thinking about it. Imagine if every time you breathed in, you remembered that you were breathing in the same presence that creates galaxies. That's what Jesus was teaching. Not a distant Father you have to beg for approval, but a living presence you're swimming in every single moment. The second word that changes everything is Malkuth, translated as kingdom. When Jesus said, Malkuth d'Shmaya, which became kingdom of heaven, he wasn't talking about a place with golden gates you go to after you die if you're good enough. Malkuth in Aramaic means the way things are ruled, the way things flow and organize themselves. It's like the invisible intelligence that tells a flower how to bloom, or a bird how to build a nest. And Shmaya doesn't mean sky or heaven up there. It means the realm of light, of consciousness, of awareness. So when Jesus said Malkuth d'Shmaya, he was saying, The way divine intelligence organizes reality is available to you right now, in your awareness, in this moment. It's not something you wait for. It's not something you earn. It's something you wake up to, like opening your eyes and suddenly seeing that you've been standing in a garden of miracles your entire life. Can you feel how different that is? How much power that puts back in your hands? The third word is perhaps the most revolutionary of all, Shwoq. What we've been taught means forgive in the phrase, forgive us our debts. But here's where the translation becomes a prison. In Greek, the word used was aphaimi, which does mean to forgive or let go. But the Aramaic shwoq means something far more profound. It means to untie, to loosen, to return something to its original state, like untangling a knot in a rope. It's not about someone else granting you pardon for being bad. It's about releasing yourself from the tangles of confusion that make you forget who you really are. Think about it like this. Imagine your mind is a beautiful thread. But over time it gets twisted and knotted with fear, with shame, with all the stories you've been told about being not good enough. Shwoq is the practice of gently untying those knots yourself. Jesus wasn't saying you need to beg for forgiveness from an angry God. He was teaching you how to free yourself from the patterns that keep you trapped. Every time you let go of a resentment, every time you stop believing a limiting thought, you are practicing Shwoq. You are becoming untangled. The fourth word is Hmona, translated as faith. In modern Christianity, faith usually means believing things you can't prove, believing doctrine, accepting what you're told without question. But in Aramaic, Hmona means something completely different. It comes from a root that means to trust deeply, to be firm, to be stable, like a tree with roots that go deep into the earth. It's not about believing the right things in your head. It's about trusting in your direct experience of reality. When Jesus talked about faith, the size of a mustard seed moving mountains, he wasn't talking about wishful thinking. He was talking about the unshakable knowing that comes when you experience the divine presence directly, even for a moment. That tiny seed of real knowing, not belief, but knowing, has the power to transform everything. It's like when you know fire is hot because you felt it, not because someone told you. That's Hmona. That's the kind of trust that actually changes reality because it comes from connection, not from trying to convince yourself of something. These four words alone, Abwoon, Malkuth, Shwoq, Hmona, are already rebuilding the foundation. Can you see it? The divine is your breath. Heaven is here now. Forgiveness is self-liberation. Faith is direct knowing. This isn't the Christianity of control and guilt. This is the mystical teaching of awakening that was hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. Now let's dive into the fifth word, and this one might shake you to your core, because it reveals something about suffering that religion has used to control people for centuries. The word is Koba, translated into English as sin, or trespasses, or debts. When you hear the word sin, what comes to mind? Probably something bad you did, something that makes you dirty, something that separates you from God and requires punishment. That's exactly what the translators wanted you to think. But Koba in Aramaic means something radically different. Koba comes from a root word that means to miss the mark, like an archer shooting an arrow that doesn't hit the center of the target. It also means to become tangled, knotted up, or to wander off the path. Imagine you're walking through a forest and there's a clear trail that leads you home, but you get distracted and wander into the thorny bushes. You're not evil for wandering. You're just lost, scratched up, tangled in the brambles. That's Koba. It's not about being fundamentally bad or broken. It's about losing your way, forgetting your true nature, getting caught up in confusion. When Jesus said, Shwoq lan Koban, forgive us our sins, he was really saying, help us untangle from the ways we've missed the mark, the ways we've wandered off the path of remembering who we really are. There's no shame in it. There's no eternal punishment waiting. There's just the gentle invitation to come back to center, to return to the truth, to step out of the thorny confusion and back onto the clear path. This changes everything about guilt, doesn't it? You're not a sinner desperately needing salvation. You're a divine being who sometimes forgets and just needs to remember. The sixth word is Techlan, or Neshia, often translated as temptation in the phrase, lead us not into temptation. For generations, people have prayed this line thinking they're asking God not to test them, not to dangle evil in front of them like some cosmic trap. But the Aramaic reveals something completely different. Techlan doesn't mean temptation, it means distraction, surface appearances, the shallow glamour of things that look important but aren't real. Think about how you can spend all day worried about things that, in a year, won't matter at all. Or how you can get completely absorbed in what people think about you, in comparing yourself to others, in chasing things that sparkle but leave you empty. That's Techlan. It's the hypnotic pull of illusion, the shiny distractions that make you forget the deeper truth of who you are. When Jesus taught people to pray, let us not enter into Techlan, he was saying, keep us focused on what's real. Don't let us get lost in the surface noise. Help us stay awake to the deeper current of reality. And Neshia means to be forgotten, to forget, to lose awareness. It's like when you're driving and suddenly realize you've gone 10 miles without noticing anything because your mind was somewhere else. Jesus was teaching. Don't let me fall asleep to the sacred presence that's here right now. Don't let me forget that every moment is holy. This isn't about resisting evil temptations. It's about staying present, staying aware, not getting hypnotized by the 10,000 things that pull your attention away from the miracle of being alive. The seventh word brings everything together, and it's the word Tova, or Bisha, translated as good and evil. In Western Christianity, good and evil are absolute categories, cosmic forces locked in eternal battle, and you're supposed to be on the right side or face damnation. But in Aramaic, Tova means ripe, mature, in alignment, harmonious, like fruit that's ready to eat. And Bisha means unripe, immature, not yet in alignment, like fruit that's still green and will give you a stomachache if you eat it. Can you see the difference? Instead of cosmic moral warfare, Jesus was teaching about growth, timing, maturity. Something isn't evil. It's just not ripe yet. Someone isn't damned. They're just not mature yet in their understanding. This removes the violence from spirituality. There's no one to condemn, no one to destroy. There's only the patience of watching things ripen in their own time, including yourself. When you make a mistake, you're not evil. You're just not ripe yet in that area. When someone hurts you, they're not a monster. They're just acting from unripeness, from fear and confusion. This teaching of Tova and Bisha creates compassion instead of judgment. It creates growth instead of shame. Jesus looked at the world and saw a garden where everything was in different stages of becoming, and his job wasn't to punish the unripe fruit, but to provide the light and water that helps everything mature. That's what he was inviting you to do. Not to divide the world into the saved and the damned, but to recognize that all beings are ripening toward awakening, each in their own time. These 7 words, Abwoon, Malkuth, Shwoq, Hmona, Koba, Techlan, Tova, they form a complete teaching. The divine is your breath. Heaven is here now. Liberation is untangling yourself. Faith is direct knowing. There is no sin, only missing the mark. There is no temptation, only distraction from truth. There is no evil, only unripeness. This is the Christianity that was buried. This is the mystical core that institutions couldn't control, so they mistranslated it, wrapped it in fear, and sold it back to you as religion. But now you know. And once you know, you can't unknow. The words have been spoken again in their original power, and something in your soul is waking up to what it always knew was true. So now that you know these 7 Aramaic words, and their true meanings, the question becomes, how do you actually use this knowledge? How do you take these ancient mystical truths and let them transform your daily life? Because wisdom without practice is just interesting information. It doesn't change you. Jesus didn't teach these concepts so people could think about them. He taught them so people could live them, breathe them, become them. So let's explore practical ways to embody each of these 7 words starting right now, today. First, practice Abwoon breathing. Several times throughout your day, stop whatever you're doing and take 3 slow, conscious breaths. As you breathe in, silently say, Abwoon, remembering that you're breathing in the divine creative force that animates all life. As you breathe out, feel yourself releasing back into that same presence. You're not separate from it. You're like a wave that rises and falls, but is never separate from the ocean. Do this when you wake up, before meals, when you feel stressed, before sleep. Make your breath a constant reminder that the sacred isn't something you reach for. It's what's breathing you right now. Second, practice Malkuth awareness. Start looking for evidence that divine intelligence is organizing everything right now, not someday in the future. Notice how your body heals a cut without you directing it. Notice how nature knows exactly when to bloom and when to rest. Notice the perfect timing of things that seem like coincidences, but feel orchestrated. Keep a small notebook, and each evening write down one moment where you noticed this invisible intelligence at work. As you train yourself to see it, you'll realize the kingdom of heaven isn't coming. It's been here all along, humming beneath everything. Third, practice Shwoq, the art of untangling. Every night before sleep, think of one knot in your mind that you're ready to loosen. Maybe it's a resentment toward someone who hurt you. Maybe it's a belief that you're not good enough. Maybe it's anxiety about the future. Don't fight it. Don't shame yourself for having it. Just gently observe it like you're looking at a tangled necklace chain. Then say out loud or in your mind, I loosen this knot. I return to my original nature. Breathe deeply and imagine the tangle loosening just a little bit. You don't have to fix everything at once. Even the smallest untangling creates space for your true self to shine through. Fourth, build Hmona, deep trust through direct experience. This is crucial. Stop trying to believe things you haven't experienced. Instead, test everything. When you practice Abwoon breathing, notice if you actually feel different. When you look for Malkuth, notice if you actually see patterns of intelligence. When you untangle through Shwoq, notice if you actually feel lighter. Let your faith be built on your own direct knowing, not on what anyone told you to believe. Write down your experiences. Track them. Trust what you discover yourself more than what any book or teacher says. This is how you develop the unshakable knowing that Jesus called faith. Not belief in doctrines, but trust in what you've tasted yourself. Fifth, reframe Koba when you miss the mark. The next time you make a mistake, catch yourself before the spiral of shame begins. Instead of, I'm such a terrible person, say, I missed the mark. I got tangled. I wandered off the path. Then ask, what was I aiming for? What's the clear path? How do I find my way back? Treat yourself like you would treat a child who got lost in the woods, not with punishment, but with gentle guidance back to safety. And when someone else hurts you, try seeing their action as Koba. They're tangled up, they've wandered from their true nature, they're shooting arrows blindly because they're in pain. This doesn't mean you accept abuse, but it means you stop taking it personally and you respond with wisdom instead of reaction. Sixth, recognize Techlan. Catch the distractions. Start noticing when you're being pulled into surface appearances, into illusions that seem important but aren't real. Set an alarm on your phone 3 times a day with the question, am I focused on what's real right now, or am I lost in distraction? When you notice you're scrolling mindlessly, worrying about things you can't control, comparing yourself to others, caught in drama that won't matter next week. Pause. Take an Abwoon breath. Ask yourself, what's real and true right now, in this moment? Usually what's real is simpler than the noise. You're breathing, you're alive, you're aware. There's beauty somewhere nearby if you look. Return to that. This is how you stop being hypnotized by Techlan. Seventh, practice Tova consciousness, seeing ripeness and unripeness. When you judge yourself harshly, ask, am I just not ripe yet in this area? When someone frustrates you, ask, are they acting from unripeness? This doesn't mean you don't have boundaries or that you accept harmful behavior. It means you stop adding the poison of moral condemnation on top of everything. A gardener doesn't scream at unripe tomatoes to turn red faster. A gardener provides conditions for ripening: light, water, patience, time. Do the same for yourself and others. Ask, what would help this situation ripen? What would bring more light here? What would nourish growth? Here's a simple daily practice that weaves all 7 together. Each morning, take 5 minutes to sit quietly. Do Abwoon breathing for a minute. Then set an intention to notice Malkuth, divine intelligence, in your day. Identify one Koba, one place where you've missed the mark, and practice Shwoq, loosening that knot. Remind yourself that Hmona grows from your direct experience, so stay awake and notice what's true. Be vigilant against Techlan, the distractions that pull you from presence. And see everyone, including yourself, through the lens of Tova and Bisha, ripeness and unripeness, growth and becoming. The most important thing to understand is this. These aren't just nice ideas to think about. These are practices that rewire your consciousness. Every time you choose Abwoon breathing over anxiety, you're changing your relationship with the divine. Every time you choose Shwoq over resentment, you're liberating yourself. Every time you choose to see unripeness instead of evil, you're stepping into the consciousness that Jesus embodied. And that's what this was always about. Not worshiping Jesus, but becoming like him. Awakening to the same truth he awakened to, speaking the same words of power that he spoke. So here we are at the end of this journey, but really, it's just the beginning. We've walked together through 7 Aramaic words that Jesus actually spoke: Abwoon, Malkuth, Shwoq, Hmona, Koba, Techlan, Tova, and in doing so, we've uncovered a teaching so radical, so liberating, that it had to be hidden beneath layers of mistranslation and institutional control. Because if people really understood what Jesus was saying, if they really grasped that the divine is as close as their breath, that heaven is here now, that they can untangle themselves from suffering, that there is no sin only missing the mark, that faith is direct knowing, not blind belief. If people truly understood this, they wouldn't need the middlemen anymore. Wouldn't need someone to tell you you're worthy. You wouldn't need someone to grant you forgiveness. You wouldn't need someone to promise you heaven someday if you're obedient now. You would recognize your own divine nature, take responsibility for your own awakening, and step into the power that has always been yours. And that's exactly what Jesus was teaching. Not a new religion to control people, but an ancient path to set them free. Think about what changes when you let these 7 words sink into your bones. When you wake up tomorrow and take your first breath as Abwoon, as the divine creative force flowing through you, how does your day begin differently? When you look for Malkuth throughout your day, noticing the intelligence organizing everything, how does that shift your anxiety about the future? When you practice Shwoq at night, untangling the knots of resentment and fear, how does that change your sleep, your dreams, your peace? When you build Hmona on your own direct experience instead of borrowed beliefs, how does that make you unshakable? When you see your mistakes as Koba, just missing the mark, just wandering off path, instead of proof that you're broken, how does that transform your shame into compassion? When you catch yourself falling into Techlan, the distractions and illusions that pull you from presence, and gently return to what's real, how does that deepen your aliveness? And when you see everyone, including yourself, through the lens of Tova and Bisha, ripeness and unripeness, instead of good and evil, how does that open your heart to a love that includes everything? These aren't small shifts. This is a complete transformation of consciousness. This is waking up from a 2,000-year-old dream that told you that you were separate, fallen, unworthy, and in need of external salvation. And stepping into the reality that you are the breath of the divine, that you are already home, that you were never actually lost, just momentarily forgetful, and now you're remembering. I want you to understand something important. The institutions that mistranslated these words didn't do it out of pure malice. They did it because they themselves had forgotten. Generation after generation, the translation of the translation of the translation moved further from the living truth, until all that remained were the shells of words that once vibrated with power. But the original teaching never died. It was preserved in the Aramaic, waiting in the ancient manuscripts, held in the hearts of mystics who knew that someday people would be ready to hear it again. And that someday is now. That people is you. You're here watching this video because something in your soul called you to remember. Something in you already knows these truths, and hearing them spoken again in their original power is just awakening what was always there. You don't need to become something you're not. You just need to untangle from everything you were told you had to be. So here's my invitation to you. Don't just let this be another interesting video you watch and forget. Take one of these 7 words and live with it for a week. Let it become your companion, your teacher, your gateway into direct experience. Start with Abwoon if you want to feel connection. Start with Shwoq if you're carrying heaviness. Start with Malkuth if you want to see the sacred in the ordinary. Let the word work on you, the way water works on stone, not through force, but through constant, gentle presence. And then notice what happens. Notice how your relationships shift. Notice how your inner dialogue changes. Notice how moments of grace appear more frequently. Notice how you become less afraid and more trusting, less judgmental and more compassionate, less contracted and more open. This is the fruit of speaking the words that Jesus spoke, not in ancient Galilee, but here, now, in your own life. The truth is, Christianity was never meant to be a religion about Jesus. It was meant to be the teaching of Jesus, a path of awakening that anyone can walk, regardless of their background, their beliefs, their past. These 7 Aramaic words are the keys that unlock that path. They don't belong to any church or institution. They belong to you. They belong to anyone who has ears to hear and a heart willing to remember. So take these keys. Use them. And as you do, you'll discover that the Christianity that was buried beneath mistranslation is the most revolutionary spiritual teaching the world has ever known. Not because it promises salvation someday, but because it delivers liberation right now, in this breath, in this moment, in this precious, holy, utterly ordinary experience of being alive. Type, "I remember," in the comments if something in you has awakened today. And if this video has touched you, if these words have stirred something deep in your soul, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the truth, once remembered, wants to be spoken. It wants to be lived. It wants to set everyone free. The words have been spoken. The truth has been revealed. Now the rest is up to you.